The Russian army launched a coordinated assault from several directions, rolling forward with a column of tanks that rattled across the countryside. Each vehicle was fitted with improvised anti-drone cages, heavy welded metal frames perched over the turrets in an effort to ward off Ukraine's infamous FPV kamikaze drones. The iron monsters moved slowly, their weight pressing down on the earth, leaving deep scars in the soil as they advanced toward the Ukrainian village that marked their objective. The distant roar of their engines blended with the steady clatter of tracks grinding over gravel and broken asphalt. To the soldiers inside, the cages offered reassurance, but to the Ukrainians watching from concealed positions, they were simply targets waiting to be tested. The armored formation crept forward cautiously, scanning the terrain until they crossed into an invisible but deadly zone, the reach of Ukrainian artillery. A few moments later, the battlefield erupted. The whistling descent of shells was followed by devastating impacts, throwing fountains of dirt, smoke, and twisted metal into the air. Shockwaves rippled across the ground, rattling windows in the nearby settlement. The Russian tanks slowed, some halting to avoid the inferno, others swerving clumsily to dodge craters opening in the path ahead. Though the artillery couldn't stop the advance entirely, it robbed the Russian attack of momentum. And in modern battle, seconds of delay can mean survival. For the Ukrainians, this was the opportunity they had prepared for, the chance to unleash their drone operators. Far behind the front line, inside bunkers, abandoned houses, and even concealed shipping containers reinforced with sandbags, Ukrainian FPV drone pilots were already at their controls. Each man or woman sat hunched forward, eyes locked on a flickering monitor displaying a live video feed from the drone's tiny onboard camera. Around them, assistants checked batteries, adjusted antennas, and prepared backup craft. The atmosphere was tense but electric. They knew that every strike could change the rhythm of the battle. Orders came over encrypted radios. Engage the armored column. Priority, lead vehicles. At once, the operators armed their drones. Warheads, some standard, some improvised, were strapped beneath the buzzing machines, ready to transform the small craft into guided missiles. The first operator pressed forward on his control sticks. His drone, no larger than a dinner plate with whirring propellers, skimmed low over the treetops, darting between branches before rising slightly to lock onto the lumbering silhouette of the lead Russian tank. The soldiers' breathing slow, hands steady despite the tension. The buzzing grew louder as the drone closed in. Russian troops on the ground pointed upward, shouting warnings, but it was already too late. The drone slammed into the turret and exploded with brutal force. Fire and smoke erupted instantly, the tank shuddering under the impact. Inside the Ukrainian control shelter, the operator clenched his fists in triumph. One kill confirmed. Even before the smoke cleared, a second Russian tank maneuvered to bypass its burning comrade, trying to continue the push toward the Ukrainian line. But another drone was already in the air. This one flew even lower, skimming the dirt road as if it were part of the landscape itself, evading detection until the final seconds. The pilot adjusted course, locked onto the moving vehicle, and surged forward. The last image on the screen was the tank filling the frame. Then the feed cut to static as another explosion echoed across the fields. Flames erupted, pieces of armor flying skyward. In minutes, two armored giants had been reduced to burning hulks. Yet the battle was only beginning. Two tanks destroyed were not enough to halt the attack. More Russian vehicles crawled forward, smoke swirling around their protective cages. Ukrainian drone crews scrambled to ready additional craft. Mechanics rushed fresh batteries into place. The operators barely had time to reset before launching the next wave. The battlefield buzzed like an angry hive as more FPVs took flight, weaving through smoke and artillery haze. Russia's anti-drone defenses, crude jammers, and automatic machine guns mounted on the tanks spat bursts of fire into the air. Some drones were shredded before they reached their targets. Others swerved wildly as their signals flickered. But skill made the difference. Ukrainian pilots, hardened by months of combat, compensated for the interference, steering their craft with remarkable precision. Strike after strike connected. The lead armored vehicle in the Russian convoy became the focus of the assault. It endured 3, 4, even 5 direct hits before finally succumbing, its armor peeled apart like a crushed can. Seconds later, the second vehicle behind it was also destroyed, its turret blasted off by another suicide drone that dove in from above. Within the span of half an hour, what had begun as a confident armored push was reduced to a scene of wreckage. Flames lit the battlefield as Russian soldiers scrambled for cover, some abandoning vehicles entirely. The drones had proved once again that size and steel were no guarantee of survival. Still, victory came at a price. Each Russian adaptation forced Ukraine to commit more resources. With every destroyed tank, more drones were consumed. Russian engineers had welded thick metal mesh across their tanks, creating cages that turned the once sleek machines into awkward hedgehogs of steel. The modification was crude, but surprisingly effective. In some cases, Ukrainian operators needed to expend as many as 10 drones to pierce the defenses and land a killing blow. Yet the cost equation remained firmly in Ukraine's favor. A drone, even loaded with explosives, cost only a fraction of a single armored vehicle. Economically, the trade was devastating for Russia. Strategically, it meant every convoy was vulnerable, no matter how reinforced. The Russian commanders pressed on, ordering several tanks to accelerate and attempt another breakthrough. Dust billowed behind the armored column as the vehicles roared forward. But the Ukrainians had prepared ambush points along the route. FPV teams waited silently, watching their monitors, letting the tanks enter deeper into the kill zone. At the precise moment, they launched. The drones swarmed like angry hornets, darting toward the lumbering machines. The first explosions ripped through the convoy, shattering hatches, igniting fuel, sending soldiers scrambling. One Russian vehicle swerved desperately, its crew bailing out, sprinting toward cover. Another tank lurched to a halt, smoke pouring from its engine compartment. Among the chaos, one moment stood out with grim clarity. A Russian transport car, filled with troops, attempted a hasty retreat. In their panic, the soldiers had left the side door open. Through his monitor, a Ukrainian drone operator saw his opportunity. He adjusted his trajectory, guiding the buzzing craft straight into the vehicle's cabin. The feed showed a brief glimpse of terrified faces before the screen flashed white. The explosion tore through the car from within, scattering debris across the road. For the Ukrainian crews watching, it was proof that precision and patience could topple even the best-laid plans of their enemy. Within minutes of the battle's start, the Russian advance was in shambles. Their attempt to seize the forest edge had collapsed. Still, desperation drove them forward. They deployed U-277 Meteor rocket systems, vehicles originally designed for mine-clearing operations. Due to weapon shortages, these machines were now pressed into service as makeshift offensive weapons. Their ungainly frames and distinctive launchers made them easy to spot. As they rolled forward, they unleashed wave after wave of rockets, their howls piercing the air, their impacts shaking the earth. Yet despite the barrage, the Ukrainians held firm. Shelters absorbed the blasts, trenches provided cover, and morale remained unbroken. The fight devolved into a stalemate, with both sides exchanging fire across a shattered front line. Explosions echoed without pause, artillery duels punctuating the day with thunderous roars. Smoke hung low over the treetops. Neither side could gain the upper hand. To tip the balance, Russian commanders reached for a brutal option. A heavy flamethrower system, imported and rare, designed to incinerate defensive positions with sheets of fire. The weapon was terrifying, capable of clearing entire trenches in seconds. But Ukrainian intelligence had already intercepted the move. Scouts reported the convoy's approach, and a warning raced through the defensive net. Orders were issued swiftly. Evacuate before the bombardment begins. Ukrainian troops melted away from their positions just minutes before the flamethrowers roared. Jets of fire and fuel blasted across empty ground, igniting earth and timber, sending fireballs rolling skyward. But the carefully prepared defenders were gone. Their withdrawal had been flawless. When the smoke cleared, Russian troops advanced confidently into what they thought was a cleared position, only to become targets themselves. From concealed positions nearby, Ukrainian drone operators launched their counterattack. FPVs streaked toward the flamethrower systems, striking one after another. The explosions were massive, tearing the specialized vehicles apart. The counterstrike was ruthless and precise. Within moments, the very weapon meant to break the stalemate had been turned into scrap metal smoldering in the mud. At nearly the same time, Ukrainian FPVs intercepted another Russian asset, a multiple-launch rocket system that had failed to retreat quickly enough. Through their monitors, operators watched the ungainly vehicle lumber along a dirt road. A drone swooped in, closing the distance. The operator held steady, guiding the craft straight into the launcher. The resulting detonation consumed the vehicle, hurling wreckage across the field. Once again, Ukrainian precision had turned Russian confidence into disaster.